Alright guys, hello, I am back with another Remnant from the Ashes video. Fuck, I said that wrong. Okay, anyways, who cares? So I've realized that a lot of people are doing build videos now on Remnant from the Ashes. And I decided why not, I'm gonna take a chance at it. So this is actually my personal build. And I just recently created this too, and definitely just from the title, you guys should probably know what this build is mainly aimed for. This is mainly aimed for the tougher enemies in the game, the elite enemies, and trust me, elite enemies are a pain in the ass, and I actually plan to do a video about them pretty soon. But otherwise than that, I'll be showing you guys my build. So this build composes of a couple of things. So first off, you need the repulsor, and you need to upgrade that bitch as high as possible. Now obviously, if you just finished the game, that means you need to get it to like a fucking max. But then if you're in the beginning of like your game, right, and you jumped into your friend's world and they helped you cheese it, so then you guys can get like the last weapon, and then you're in your game, right, you don't have to get it the highest, but I recommend for this build you get it the highest you possibly can. And I guess for my case that's +7 because I need hardened iron, and I don't actually have any hardened iron yet. The second thing you'll need is practically any secondary that isn't mainly a boss weapon, and the reason why is because you need the Song of Swords. If you guys don't have the Song of Swords, it's probably not going to be as effective as it would be, but definitely you can manage without the Song of Swords. Melee doesn't even matter at all, and the armor, to be honest, doesn't really matter. I don't really like having to, I guess, what's the word, well, I guess if I'm gonna be honest, Void Skull armor, Void armor in general is probably gonna be the best armor set if you guys want to increase the damage of this build. Personally, to me, the thing is that with Vengeance, it only works if you're taking damage. And to take damage 3 times to get a 39% extra damage boost isn't really worth it to me, because some enemies on the harder difficulty can actually one-shot you, and this will be completely useless if they manage to get you down. So that's just me. I don't really like fucking with that shit, to be honest. So I really keep to the outer armor. Really, the amulet doesn't even matter. I guess anything you want to use to increase the effectiveness of the damage of the build, you can. Like, I guess I don't have that many amulets, but I have something called the Rock of Anguish, which increases my reload speed each time I take damage. And I guess reload speed is very, very, very useful, especially with the repulsor, because of the reload speed is actually quite tedious and long. But definitely you can use whatever amulet you want. What you do need though is the Braided Thorns. Now the reason why you need this is because it increases crit chance by 15% for 6 seconds after slaying an enemy. Now this is really good because most of the time that when you're fighting elite enemies, there are a bunch of minions around that enemy, a bunch of regular guys, and if you manage to kill those guys first before actually putting damage into the elite enemy, that's just going to increase your critical chance, and critical chance also increases critical damage and everything like that. So if you guys do have the traits and all. Another thing that you will need is the Stone of Balance, which increases ranged and melee damage by 10%. Having an extra 10% will definitely help out. Now traits, obviously, by the time you get the repulsor, you should probably be around trait level 80. If that's the case, then I highly suggest you do what you need to do for vigor and endurance, and you put that spirit all the way to 20. Quick hands you definitely need. You don't entirely need it though, but if you do definitely have extra trait points, then I highly suggest that you guys upgrade quick hands as much as possible. You will extremely need Executioner. Executioner is actually a very fundamental part of this build. You'll also need Kingslayer and Mind's Eye. Now Mind's Eye is something that you can actually get last. Kingslayer and Executioner is probably what the 2 main things you need. Now the reason why you need all these things is because I heavily underestimated the repulsor. The repulsor is actually, to be honest, one of the more stronger one of the more stronger weapons in the game, and that is because it acts like a fucking sniper, and which is just purely amazing. The amount of damage you could potentially do to an elite enemy by itself and to bosses are substantial, right? So basically here's how the gun works. Its ideal range is actually 8 meters, which is actually pretty short. If I had to say, it's probably like this right here. Alright, if you land it, like the more you scope in, the reticle closes, so you actually do a more precise shot, more like a sniper shot, right? Although it's more like a laser beam shot, as you guys can see right there. right? It's definitely more accurate, so then you can pinpoint any weak spot you need. And the moment you get the reticle down all the way, the moment you're ready to shoot again, it's practically all the way down. Now obviously if you're just spamming it, right, it's gonna further increase outwards. Or if you want it to, you can just shoot like this to get as much body damage as possible. Preferably for me, I like, you know, waiting to zoom in, but obviously sometimes you don't have the chance to fully zoom in, right? The difference is pretty fucking crazy if you actually zoom in. And that is one of the main better things about the repulsor. Its second thing, which is actually the only reason why you're going to be able to kill the elite enemies so easily, is because of its passive ability, Banish, right? Basically, whenever it shoots a projectile that banishes the target into another dimension for 8 seconds, and when they return, they'll take 1.5 times the damage from the primary fire of the repulsor weapon for 10 seconds. Now this only works for the repulsor weapon, and what I mean by that is that you can't like upgrade, you can't like banish a fucking enemy and then switch to a different weapon, right? That's not how it's gonna work. It's specifically meant to only increase the damage of the repulsor weapon for 10 seconds, right? Now, in terms of math, 1.5% is actually 150%. And the reason why you also need the Song of Swords is because whenever you activate this, it will give you an additional 30%. And the reason why you need the Stone of Balance is because you also get an additional 10%, which is just fucking crazy. Which is why, like I said, if you guys want to use the Void Armor, you guys totally can. Or if you guys want to use a special amulet that increases whatever, you guys totally can. And the reason why you need those specific trait points is because with Spirit, you need to gain those stacks as many as possible. And what I mean by stacks is I mean by the Banish stacks. You can have a total of 8 of them, meaning you can at least crowd control 8 potential enemies, including 1 or 2 elite enemies. And with Spirit, that just obviously helps you gain the stacks faster. Quick Hand, so then you can reload faster, because that's very essential whenever you're fighting multiple enemies. Executioner, because you need that additional crit chance bonus, so then you can essentially deal more damage to critical spots if an enemy even does have a critical spot you're fighting. Kingslayer for benefiting Executioner, and Mind's Eye for obviously more extra damage, because with 21% extra range damage bonus, that implies for ideal range. Now, if you really look at it from this perspective, that is a crazy amount of damage, which is why I said that you don't exactly need the Song of Swords. But obviously if you have the Song of Swords, which is actually one of the more better mods in this game, then definitely it will help you. Now the way I'm going to be showing 2 clips, and I might be putting some of them on repeat just because I don't have that much footage. But right now I'm most likely going to be fighting an elite enemy. Now here's my strategy and what I usually do. What I usually do is that I take my secondary, which is the Magnum, and I try my best to charge that up as fast as possible, because Song of Swords, especially with the Magnum, you get it pretty fast. You only need to kill about 2 to 3 enemies before you finally get it. And on bosses, it's even faster, right? So getting the Song of Swords is probably the most important part right now, because obviously when it comes to elite enemies, even though you're doing 150% extra damage, to have that extra 30% definitely does help kill them even faster. And mainly the Song of Swords is only there to help you whenever you need to kill the elite enemies, whenever Banish isn't doing enough damage. Otherwise than that, once you get the Song of Swords, you just need to switch over to the repulsor and then get at least 1 stack for 1 elite enemy. And obviously when you're fighting elite enemies, you're bound to get more stacks when you're fighting them, but you at least need 1 for this to work. And hopefully I'm showing it by now, but I'm fighting an elite Tusk enemy and Rom, and these guys are pretty dangerous, right? You need to, their weak spot are their heads, but then to get to their heads, you need to destroy their helmets. And their helmets are actually very durable, very sturdy, and it takes a very long time to destroy their helmet. And by the time you destroy their helmet, they're already 1/4 of the way dead. And at that point, even then, shooting their helmet is still pretty, shooting their head and dealing the damage is still pretty slow. Like, you have a chance to fucking die, even if taking off his helmet. With Banish, not only do you get to crowd control and move out of the way, because as you guys might have seen or will see, is that he was charging at me and I used Banish to get out of the fucking way. Now, don't stand in front of them, because if you stand in front of them while they're doing an animation, they will continue the animation, right? Obviously, if they're standing still, they'll stand still, but if they're charging at you, when they get released from the dimension, they will fucking start charging again, which is why I moved out of the way. Now, as you guys can see, I fucking annihilated the Tusk enemy, like purely fucking dead. He is dead, and I know this sounds very unprofessional of a video, but this is honestly the best way I can explain it. He dies so fast, and that is the purpose of the repulsor. Because at first I thought that it was weak as shit, but as soon as you get the build intact, it is actually one of the most strongest, personally to me, one of the most strongest builds in this game, and definitely to me, I prefer it to be considered the most strongest build in this game. Because I can eliminate elite enemies so fast, and even when it comes to bosses, exactly, they don't exactly get banished, but instead if you look at their health bar, they actually still get the banish effect of the 1.5 times damage multiplier. And which is why it's great, because as you guys can see in this video, when I was shooting Raze, right, I put the banish mod on him, and I used the Song of Swords, and I did like fucking 2,000 crit damage with a shotgun, which is just absolutely amazing. So really, that's the build right there. If you guys are fighting bosses, then all you need to do is just use the banish on the boss. Of course, he's not going to stay frozen, but if you don't have aggro, and you shoot his weak spots with Song of Swords and with the banish mod on, then you're going to be doing crazy amounts of damage to that boss. And trust me, I was doing crazy amounts of damage to the Raze boss. Now this is mainly a build for endgame, so obviously the higher trait level you are, the more gear items you have to increase the damage output, the stronger this gun and build will be, but essentially just for regular endgame, this is how it is right now, and that's mainly my elite killer build. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry if it seemed a little bit unorganized and everything like that. It's just kind of hard to explain a build video, especially since it's my first time. But otherwise than that, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.